There are things a camera can capture in perfect detail and things it will always miss. The car waited at the curb like a sealed machine, black paint reflecting the city lights in clean, controlled lines, every inch of it engineered for precision, for privacy, for power, and inside, hidden behind tinted glass and polished metal, 14 microcameras sat quietly embedded in the frame, recording everything: the angle of a hand, the shift of a shoulder, the exact second a door opened and closed. Nothing escaped the system, nothing slipped through without being stored, cataloged, and reviewed, because Evelyn Carter did not believe in gaps, not in business, not in security, and certainly not in people. She believed in data, in clarity, in proof, and this car was her moving fortress, her controlled environment in a world she no longer trusted. The rear door opened with a soft hydraulic sigh, and she stepped in without hesitation, heels steady against the pavement, posture sharp, eyes forward, her phone already in her hand, screen glowing with unread messages, numbers, expectations. She didn't look at the driver when she entered. She never did. Because to her, drivers were part of the system, like the cameras, like the engine, like the silent hum beneath her feet, necessary but not personal. "We leave in 30 seconds, she said, voice calm, measured, not cold but distant, like someone who had learned that warmth came with a cost. In the front seat, Marcus Hale adjusted the rearview mirror by less than an inch, just enough to see the road, not enough to meet her eyes. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, his voice low, even, practiced in the art of saying only what was required. Nothing more, nothing less. The door closed, sealing them inside. The outside world dimmed, replaced by the soft ambient lighting that lined the interior, a faint glow that made everything feel deliberate, controlled. The car pulled away from the curb, smooth as a thought, merging into the slow pulse of evening traffic. And for a while, there was only silence, the kind that wasn't empty but structured. Like everything else in Evelyn's life, her phone buzzed once, then again. She scrolled, responded, dismissed, her fingers moving with quiet efficiency. Every action recorded, every second accounted for. Above them, behind them, around them, the cameras watched without blinking, capturing the angle of her jaw, the tension in her shoulders, the steady rhythm of Marcus's hands on the wheel. The system saw everything, stored everything, built a version of truth out of pixels and timestamps. And yet, in the reflection of the windshield, just for a moment, something softer flickered across Evelyn's face, something too brief, too human to be measured. But the cameras didn't pause, didn't question, didn't understand. They simply recorded what they could see and left the rest behind. The rules were never written down, but they lived in the air between them, quiet and firm, like the soft hum of the engine beneath the floor. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not turn around. Do not exist beyond the role you are paid to perform. Marcus understood them the moment he took the job, not because anyone explained them, but because he had lived long enough to recognize the shape of invisible lines, the kind that did not need words to be enforced. His hands rested steady at 10 and 2. Eyes forward, movements precise, every turn smooth, every stop calculated, the kind of driving that disappeared into the background, which was exactly the point. In the back seat, Evelyn shifted slightly, crossing one leg over the other, the faint sound of fabric moving against leather barely audible. But the cameras caught it. They caught everything, the angle of her posture, the exact degree of her head tilt as she read through another email. Her expression remained composed, controlled. But there was a tightness around her eyes now, something subtle, something that would not show up in any report. The city outside blurred past in streaks of white and red, headlights and brake lights stretching into long lines across the windshield. Rain began to fall, light at first, then steady, tapping softly against the glass, each drop traced by the wipers in perfect rhythm. Left, right, left, right. Marcus adjusted the speed without thinking, just enough to keep the ride smooth, just enough to make the transition invisible. He reached down briefly to shift the cabin temperature by 2 degrees. Warmer, not enough to be noticed, just enough to take the edge off the chill that had crept in with the rain. He did not look back. He did not need to. Behind him, Evelyn's phone buzzed again, this time longer, more insistent. She hesitated before answering, a fraction of a second, but enough to change the rhythm of the silence. She lifted the phone to her ear. Her voice when she spoke was different now. Still controlled, but thinner, stretched, like something held too tightly for too long. "I said I would handle it," she said, each word measured. But there was something underneath, something the cameras could not translate into data. The voice on the other end was loud enough to leak through, sharp, demanding. Marcus did not react, not in any visible way. His eyes remained on the road, his hands steady on the wheel, but he heard it. He heard the shift, the weight in her tone, the pause between her sentences, the way she stopped speaking halfway through a thought, then started again as if correcting herself. Outside, the rain thickened, turning the windshield into a shifting wall of water and light. The world narrowed to what was directly ahead, a tunnel of motion and reflection. The car slowed as traffic tightened, brake lights stacking one after another, red bleeding into red, time stretching, minutes feeling longer than they should. Inside, the silence changed again, not empty, not structured, but fragile, like something close to breaking. Evelyn lowered the phone slowly. The call ended without a clear resolution. She did not move for a moment, her hand still holding the device near her lap, her shoulders rising slightly with a breath she did not finish. And then, almost imperceptibly, she leaned back into the seat, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the glass, not on the road, not on the city, but somewhere further, somewhere the cameras could not reach. Marcus eased his foot off the accelerator, letting the car roll forward gently with the flow. No sudden movement, no disruption, just presence, steady and unspoken, the kind that filled a space without drawing attention to itself. And for a moment, in the quiet between the rain and the red lights ahead, something shifted, small, fragile, and completely unrecorded. Traffic came to a complete stop just past the intersection, a long line of cars frozen under the steady rain, engines idling, headlights reflecting in trembling streaks across the wet asphalt. The kind of standstill that stretched time without warning. Marcus eased the brake and held it there, the vehicle settling into stillness with a quiet confidence. No sudden jerk, no disruption, just a pause that felt almost intentional. The dashboard clock shifted by 1 minute, then another, and still nothing moved. Outside, a distant siren echoed somewhere far off, softened by the rain. The city continuing without them. Inside, the air felt different now, heavier, not because of anything visible, but because something had shifted beneath the surface. Evelyn remained in the back seat, her posture still composed but no longer rigid. Her phone rested loosely in her hand, screen dark now, forgotten for the moment. Her eyes no longer scanning, no longer calculating, just fixed ahead through the rain-streaked glass, as if trying to find something in the blur that refused to come into focus. Marcus noticed the stillness, not by looking, but by the absence of movement, the absence of that quiet rhythm she carried when she worked. He reached forward and lowered the audio system that had been playing a faint instrumental track, not turning it off completely, just soft enough that it faded into the background, like a sound you only noticed when it was gone. He adjusted the cabin lights next, dimming them by a fraction, enough to ease the sharp reflections on the windows, enough to create a softer space without drawing attention to the change. His movements were small, deliberate, and entirely without announcement, the kind of adjustments that felt like nothing but changed everything. In the back seat, Evelyn exhaled, a slow breath she did not seem aware she had been holding. Her shoulders dropped by an inch, barely noticeable, but real. She leaned her head slightly toward the window, watching the rain trace uneven paths down the glass, each drop catching the light before disappearing into the next. Her reflection flickered there for a moment, fragmented, broken into pieces by the movement of water and light. And in that reflection, for just a second, she did not look like someone in control. She looked tired, not physically, but somewhere deeper, somewhere the cameras could not categorize. Marcus kept his eyes forward, giving the space behind him room to exist without interruption. He did not ask if she was all right, did not offer words that would force her to respond. He simply remained, steady, present, a quiet constant in a moment that felt anything but stable. The rain continued, steady and unrelenting, the kind that blurred edges and softened outlines, making the world feel smaller, more contained. Minutes passed, maybe 5, maybe 10. Time lost its precision in the stillness, and then, without warning, the traffic ahead shifted. A ripple of motion passing through the line of cars, brake lights flickering off. One by one, Marcus released the brake and pressed the accelerator gently, the car moving forward again, smooth as before, as if nothing had happened, as if the pause had been nothing more than a delay in schedule. But inside, something had already changed, something small and quiet, something no system had flagged, something no camera had marked as significant, and yet it lingered there, in the space between them, unspoken and unseen, but undeniably real. The car merged back into the rhythm of the city as if the pause had never existed, tires gliding over wet pavement, the sound of rain softening into a steady background hush. Marcus kept the speed consistent, just under 40 miles per hour, adjusting naturally with the flow, no abrupt movements, no unnecessary corrections, everything measured, everything quiet. In the back seat, Evelyn shifted again, but this time slower, more deliberate, as if she were aware of the space around her in a way she had not been before. Her phone remained untouched beside her, the screen dark, notifications waiting without being answered. She stared out through the side window, watching the blurred outlines of storefronts and passing streetlights, each one stretching into soft streaks across the glass. Her reflection moved with them, faint, almost transparent, and for a moment, she looked like someone traveling through a place she did not fully belong to. The city she controlled from boardrooms and offices now reduced to something distant, something outside her reach. Marcus noticed the silence again, not empty, but settled, different from before. It no longer felt fragile, it felt held. He reached toward the console and adjusted the airflow, directing it slightly upward so it would not hit her directly. A small change, almost unnoticeable, but intentional. He had learned over time that comfort was often built from details no one mentioned, things that did not call attention to themselves. In the reflection of the rearview mirror, just at the edge of visibility, he saw her close her eyes briefly, not in sleep, but in pause. A moment carved out of everything she carried. He looked away immediately, returning his focus to the road, giving that moment the privacy it deserved. Outside, the rain began to lighten, the drops thinning into a fine mist that clung to the windshield instead of striking it. The wipers slowed, then paused, leaving behind faint trails that caught the glow of streetlights. The world sharpened slightly, edges returning, shapes becoming clear again. Inside, Evelyn opened her eyes, but she did not reach for her phone. She did not resume the rhythm she had maintained earlier. Instead, she leaned back, fully into the seat, her shoulders resting against the leather, her head tilted just enough to ease the tension that had been there before. And in that quiet shift, something else followed, something softer, less guarded. She let out a breath, not forced, not controlled, just real. Marcus did not react, did not acknowledge it, but he heard it, not with his ears, but with the awareness he carried in moments like this, the kind that came from years of understanding when to step forward and when to stay still. The car continued forward, steady and smooth, the city unfolding ahead in measured lines of light and motion, and inside that moving space, without words, without recognition, a small trust began to take shape, not declared, not even fully understood, but present, quiet, and completely outside the reach of anything that could be recorded. The car slowed as it approached the final turn, the familiar stretch of road leading toward the glass tower where Evelyn spent most of her waking hours. The building stood ahead like a fixed point in the city, sharp lines, bright windows, a place where everything was measured, controlled, and expected. Marcus eased off the accelerator, letting the vehicle glide forward with quiet precision. The rain had nearly stopped now, leaving behind a thin sheen on the pavement that reflected the building's lights in long, steady lines. Inside the car, the silence remained, but it had changed again. It no longer carried tension, it carried awareness. Evelyn shifted slightly in her seat, straightening her posture, not abruptly, but with intention, as if she were stepping back into a role she knew well. Her hand moved toward her phone, hovering for a moment before picking it up. The screen lit up instantly, notifications waiting, demands returning, the world she managed pressing back in. She glanced at it, eyes scanning quickly, and then, for a brief second, she hesitated, not because she did not understand what needed to be done, but because something in her had not fully returned yet. Something from those quiet minutes still lingered. Marcus brought the car to a smooth stop at the entrance, the tires settling against the curb with barely a sound, the engine idling softly beneath them. The building's glass doors reflected the car's silhouette. The cameras inside continued their silent observation, capturing every angle, every movement, building their version of the moment. Marcus placed the car in park and released the steering wheel slowly, his hands resting for a second before he reached toward the console. A small movement, almost invisible. He adjusted the interior light one more time, just enough to match the brightness outside, easing the transition as the door would open. Not something anyone would notice, but something that made the shift smoother, more natural. He stepped out of the car, rain-damp air brushing against his jacket, and walked around to the rear door, his pace steady, unhurried. He opened it with the same quiet precision he had used all night. No flourish, no excess, just function done with care. Evelyn did not move immediately. She sat there for a moment, phone in her hand, the screen still glowing, the world waiting. She looked up, not at the building, not at the reflection in the glass, but forward, through the open door, where the rain had left the air cooler, softer, and for a second, she seemed to pause between two versions of herself, the one who had entered the car earlier, and the one who had just sat in silence without needing to speak. Then she stepped out, heels meeting the pavement with quiet certainty, posture returning, expression composed. The shift was seamless, practiced, almost flawless. Marcus closed the door gently behind her, the soft click barely audible against the distant hum of the city. He moved back toward the driver's seat, but before he reached it, Evelyn spoke, her voice calm, measured, exactly as it had been at the start. "Be here at 7 tomorrow," she said, not turning around, not breaking stride as she walked toward the entrance. Marcus nodded once, though she did not see it. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, his tone even, unchanged. She continued forward, disappearing into the building where everything would be recorded, analyzed, and understood in numbers and reports. And yet, as the glass doors closed behind her, there remained a space between what had happened and what could be shown, a quiet moment that existed only in memory, untouched by the system, unmarked by data, but carried forward all the same. The elevator doors closed behind Evelyn with a soft, airtight hush, sealing her back into a world where everything moved with purpose and precision. The lobby lights reflected off polished marble floors, footsteps echoed in controlled rhythms, and somewhere above, in a secured server room, the data from her car was already being processed, sorted, and stored. By the time she reached her office on the 42nd floor, the footage had been uploaded, indexed by time, date, and route, ready to be reviewed like every other night. She did not always watch it. Most days she trusted the system. But tonight, something lingered, something incomplete. She set her phone down on the desk, untouched again, and moved toward the wall panel where the recordings could be accessed. A single touch brought the interface to life. Clean lines, precise timestamps, every second accounted for. She selected the most recent file, the drive from earlier that evening. The screen filled with multiple angles at once, front view, rear view, interior, cabin, each camera offering a different perspective, all synchronized, all exact. She watched as the door opened, as she stepped inside, as the car pulled away. Everything was there, just as it had happened. Her posture, her movements, the steady hands of the driver, the rain beginning to fall, the city lights stretching across the glass. She fast-forwarded, not interested in the routine, only in the moment she could not quite place, the part that had stayed with her longer than it should have. The traffic stop appeared, the car slowing, coming to a halt among a line of red lights. She leaned closer to the screen, watching carefully now. Her voice on the call played back, controlled, measured, just as she remembered. The system captured every word, every pause, even the faint sound of rain tapping against the roof. She saw herself lower the phone, saw the stillness that followed, the slight shift in her shoulders, the way she leaned back into the seat, everything visible, everything clear, and yet, something was missing. She frowned slightly, tapping the screen to rewind, then played it again, slower this time, watching the same sequence unfold, the same angles, the same details, Marcus adjusting the temperature, dimming the lights, small movements that barely registered, but still recorded. She watched her own reflection in the window, fragmented by rain. She watched the car begin to move again as traffic cleared, and still, that moment, the one she could feel but not see, was not there. She paused the video, the image frozen on the screen, a perfect representation of everything that had happened, except it was not complete, because the part that mattered most had left no trace, no timestamp, no visual confirmation. She stepped back from the panel slowly, her reflection now visible in the darkened screen, clearer than before, and for the first time that night, she realized the system had not failed. It had simply reached its limit. It had captured every movement, every measurable detail, but it had not understood what had taken place inside that silence, the way the space had changed, the way she had felt something shift without being asked, without being seen. She turned away from the screen, the room suddenly quieter than before. Her phone buzzed again on the desk, persistent, demanding, but she did not reach for it. Not yet, because for the first time in a long time, she was thinking about something that could not be explained, something that existed outside the structure she had built her life around, and it stayed with her, not as data, not as evidence, but as something far more unfamiliar, something she could not replay, only remember. Sleep did not come easily that night, not because Evelyn had more work than usual, but because for once, her mind was not occupied with numbers, projections, or decisions waiting to be made. Instead, it returned again and again to something far less tangible, something that refused to settle into logic. She lay awake in the quiet of her apartment, the city lights casting faint reflections across the ceiling, replaying not what she had seen, but what she had felt, the absence of pressure, the absence of expectation. The way the silence in that car had not demanded anything from her. She turned slightly, eyes open in the dark, trying to define it, to categorize it the way she would any other variable. But there was no structure to hold on to, no measurable outcome, just a memory that existed without proof. By morning, the routine returned, precise and efficient, the kind that did not allow space for hesitation. Her schedule filled every hour, meetings stacked back to back, conversations sharp and focused, decisions made without delay. She moved through it all with the same control she always carried, the same composed presence that left no room for doubt. And yet, beneath it, something had shifted, subtle but persistent, like a quiet question that had not been answered. By 6:45 in the evening, she was already descending the elevator again, heels steady, posture exact, the day neatly contained behind her, the lobby doors open to the street, the air cooler now, the rain gone, leaving behind a clean stillness. The car was already there, waiting in the same position as before, engine running softly, lights steady, everything exactly as it should be. Marcus stepped out as she approached, moving with the same measured pace, opening the rear door without a word, his expression unchanged, his presence as unobtrusive as ever. She paused for half a second before entering, not enough for anyone to notice, but enough for her to feel the difference. Then she stepped inside, the door closing behind her with the same controlled precision. The interior felt familiar, unchanged, the same soft lighting, the same quiet hum, the same invisible system watching from every angle. Marcus returned to the driver's seat and placed his hands on the wheel. "Where to, ma'am?" he asked, voice even, as if the previous night had never happened, as if nothing had shifted at all. Evelyn sat back, her hand resting on her phone, but she did not pick it up, not immediately. She looked forward, through the windshield, at the road ahead. Then, for a moment, her gaze lifted slightly, catching the faint outline of his reflection in the rearview mirror, just at the edge, not direct, not confrontational, just there. And something in that quiet presence registered again, not as data, not as information, but as something she could not ignore. She held that moment for a second longer than necessary, then spoke, her voice calm, but not as distant as before. "Same as yesterday," she said. A simple instruction, routine, expected, but her tone carried a subtle shift, something softer, something less guarded. Marcus nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." And the car began to move, merging into the evening traffic with the same smooth precision. The system activated, the cameras watching, recording every angle, every second, building their version of the journey, and yet, between those measured frames, something else traveled with them again, something unrecorded, something that could not be replayed, only felt, and this time, she did not try to define it, she simply let it exist. The road unfolded ahead in steady lines of light and motion, the city settling into its evening rhythm, not rushed, not stalled, just moving with quiet intention. Marcus kept the car aligned within the flow, adjusting speed by small increments, never forcing the motion, never disrupting it. Inside, the space felt familiar, but not identical to the night before. Something subtle had shifted again, not in the car, not in the system, but in the way it was being experienced. Evelyn sat back with her hands resting loosely in her lap, her phone still untouched beside her. The glow of passing streetlights moved across her face in soft intervals, illuminating then fading, revealing then concealing. Like a rhythm she did not need to control. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence settled naturally, not imposed, not required, just present. And in that presence, something began to take shape. Not dramatic, not sudden, but steady, like a quiet understanding that did not need to be named. Marcus reached forward and adjusted the speed slightly as the traffic thinned, bringing the car up to a smooth 45 miles per hour. The engine responded with a low, steady hum, the kind that blended into the background without drawing attention. He glanced briefly at the dashboard, then back to the road, his movements consistent, grounded, the same as they had always been. And yet, in the reflection of the rearview mirror, he noticed something different. Evelyn was not looking down, not reading, not distracted. She was watching the road ahead, her gaze steady, following the same path he was guiding them through. As if for the first time, she was not just being transported, she was present in the movement itself. The realization did not change his posture, did not alter his pace, but it registered quietly, like everything else he carried. Outside, the city opened slightly, the buildings giving way to a wider stretch of road lined with trees and low lights, the air clearer. Now, the remnants of rain gone, replaced by a calm stillness that softened the edges of everything it touched. Inside, Evelyn shifted again, but this time not to regain control, not to return to a role, but simply to settle. She leaned her head back slightly, eyes still open, but less focused on any one thing, more aware of the space itself, the quiet, the motion, the absence of pressure. And then, without looking up, without changing her tone dramatically, she spoke. "You adjusted the temperature yesterday," she said, her voice calm, almost observational, the kind of statement that could have been directed at no one in particular. Marcus did not turn, did not hesitate. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, simple, direct, nothing added, nothing explained. There was a pause after that, not awkward, not forced, just a space where something could have been said, but was not. Evelyn nodded slightly, a small movement, almost invisible, but real, and then she added, quieter this time. It helped. The words were not dramatic, not emotional, but they carried weight, not because of what they said, but because of what they acknowledged. Marcus absorbed it without reaction, not dismissing it, not expanding on it, just letting it exist. "I am glad," he said, his tone unchanged, steady as ever. And that was all. No further conversation followed, no shift in structure. The car continued forward, the system continued recording, capturing every word, every movement, storing them as data points in a sequence of events. But even as the cameras observed, something else moved through that space again, something that could not be defined by angles or timestamps, something built not from what was said, but from what was understood without needing to be spoken, and it remained there, quiet, steady, and entirely beyond the reach of anything designed to measure it. The car slowed once more as it approached the building, the same glass tower rising ahead with its quiet authority, lights glowing from within like a structure that never truly rested. Marcus eased the vehicle to the curb with the same measured precision, the motion seamless, controlled, the kind that did not draw attention because it never needed to. The engine settled into a soft idle, the world outside continuing in its steady rhythm, and inside, the silence returned again, but now it felt different from the first night. It was no longer unfamiliar, no longer fragile. It was understood, Evelyn sat still for a moment, her gaze forward, her phone resting untouched beside her once again. The habit still there, but no longer immediate. She did not rush to step out, did not move with the same automatic precision she once carried. Instead, she allowed a brief pause, not long enough to disrupt anything, but long enough to exist. Marcus released his hands from the wheel slowly, the movement controlled, deliberate. He stepped out of the car and moved around to the rear door. Rain no longer in the air, only a faint coolness left behind. He opened the door with the same quiet motion, consistent, unchanged. Evelyn stepped out, heels meeting the pavement with a soft, steady sound. Her posture straight, her expression composed, the version of herself the world expected already in place. But something lingered beneath it, something not visible, not measurable. She took a step forward, then stopped, just slightly, not enough for anyone passing by to notice, but enough to interrupt the rhythm she usually followed. Marcus had already begun to close the door, his attention returning to the vehicle, to the role he held. But her voice reached him before the motion completed. "Marcus," she said, his name spoken clearly, without hesitation, without formality. He paused, just for a fraction of a second, not turning immediately, but acknowledging the shift in a way that did not break his composure. He turned then, meeting her gaze briefly, not holding it too long, just enough. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, the same steady tone, unchanged in its calm, but present in a different way now. She held his attention for a moment, not searching for words, not calculating, just allowing the silence to exist between them, and then she said it, simple, quiet, but real. "Thank you for yesterday." There was no explanation, no elaboration, nothing added to define what she meant, but it did not need to be explained, because it was not about what had been seen. It was about what had been felt. Marcus nodded once, a small movement, grounded, acknowledging without expanding. "You are welcome," he said, his voice even, but carrying the same quiet understanding. And that was all. No further exchange, no shift in structure. She turned and walked toward the building, her pace steady, her posture returning fully as she passed through the glass doors, the world inside already waiting, already demanding. Marcus closed the door gently, the soft click. Settling into the evening air, he returned to the driver's seat, the system still active, the cameras still recording.